Cybercrimes and their impact on government and industry. Presentation for Library 287, Cybersecurity. In the last decade, the instances of cybercrime have increased. In 2007, we saw the first major cyber attack committed against a national government. More recently, several prominent companies such as Sony, Target, and Neiman Marcus have been in the news for having customer information stolen. This presentation will examine some benchmark cybercrimes and their impact, the different types of attacks that perpetrators use to commit cybercrimes, and finally, what governments and industry are doing to help eliminate cybercrime. According to survey results released in June 2011, 90% of U.S. businesses had experienced at least one cybersecurity breach during the 12 months previous. Of 583 U.S. IT professionals surveyed, more than half, 59%, experienced two or more breaches during the same time period. When examining the 2011 and 2013 survey results, we can see that in the last 2 years, malicious attacks have increased by 7% and become the main source of data breaches in the U.S. This aligns with the increased number of media-reported data breaches that we've seen recently. The most common types of cyber attacks involved in these breaches include malware infections, sabotage, phishing, social engineering, and SQL injection. The Estonian attacks were a milestone in cybercrime because this was the first publicly announced large-scale cyber attack launched against a government body. Distributed denial-of-service attacks were used to shut down the websites of all government offices, major banks, and several political parties. The Estonian government was vulnerable to this type of attack because, as one official put it, Estonia essentially operated as a paperless government. One significant result of the Estonian attacks was that Western governments realized that they couldn't address these types of attacks from a position of isolation. They would need to forge new bonds of international cooperation to solve cyber problems. The Mac attacks. The Mac attacks were significant because previously Apple products had a reputation of being safe and not vulnerable to viruses. These security virtues contributed to the appeal of Mac products for many consumers. However, this attack proved that Apple computers weren't as invulnerable as everybody believed. This is something to keep in mind as Apple products become increasingly ubiquitous in our daily lives. The Adobe breaches were significant for two reasons. The first reason is the sheer number of users who were hacked and have the potential to have their identity stolen. The second is the death of the source code of Adobe's major products. This is significant for Adobe as a company because it hurts them financially and damages their reputation. Now, their software can more easily be pirated, costing them potential millions of dollars in retail sales. Further, their reputation has been damaged because now their source code compromises the cybersecurity of companies who use their software on a daily basis. This could cost them contracts with government agencies and other entities who place a high value on tight security. The attacks against Neiman Marcus and Target are noteworthy because until these attacks occurred, consumers weren't aware of how vulnerable retailers were to data theft. These attacks have raised many important issues in consumers' mind, including the security of their payment data and the timeliness of public notification. Many companies who have experienced these types of data breaches are reluctant to notify individual consumers or make the information publicly known. Breached companies often state that one reason for the lack of consumer notification is that companies want to make sure they understand the depth of the problem and have a solution to it before notifying customers. Another reason companies are hesitant to make these breaches publicly known is that they fear loss of reputation may hurt them financially. However, studies have shown that companies rebound from breaches with improved performance. Attack methods. Common attack methods used in many of these cyber attacks previously mentioned include SQL injection, social engineering, dedicated denial-of-service attacks, phishing, sabotage, both physical and internal. SQL injection is becoming a very popular method of cyber attack. This is because an SQL injection attack allows the hacker to read confidential data stored on the database, make modifications to the database, and gain admin-level access to affect the operations of the database or internet site. The hacker performs this type of attack by typing malicious SQL commands into a field found on a website or database with the purpose of discovering or exploiting a security vulnerability. Currently, social engineering is the most difficult attack type to prevent because, generally speaking, people want to be helpful. Using this type of attack, hackers can gain access to secure systems or obtain confidential information. The best and really only way to prevent this type of attack is through security awareness training. The Estonian government was crippled by hackers implementing denial-of-service attacks. Basically, a denial-of-service attack occurs when a server is flooded with more queries than it can reasonably respond to. These attacks are commonly used because there are several variations of them, and they are some of the easiest and most effective attacks to launch. Phishing is a type of social engineering attack that, because of its prominence, deserves separate mention. In phishing attacks, the perpetrator masquerades as a trusted source and attempts to obtain confidential information such as usernames, passwords, and account numbers. According to Abawage, lack of awareness of the dangers of reverse social engineering attacks can result in unsuspecting employee disclosing company confidential information or render sophisticated information security technologies useless. Although automated systems can be used to identify some fraudulent email and websites, these systems are not completely accurate in detecting phishing attacks. As with most social engineering attacks, the only way to prevent a phishing attack is through cybersecurity awareness and training for employees. When we think of sabotage attacks, we often think of protagonists in spy movies infiltrating a secret headquarters, but this really isn't the case. Sabotage executed in reality often, though not always, lacks the subtlety and finesse of a spy movie. If this wasn't the case, we would never catch the perpetrators. Sabotage can be physical. People can destroy hardware and other types of equipment. Sabotage can also be performed digitally. What is true about both types of sabotage is that they are often performed by someone internal to the organization. Why do people sabotage the companies they work for? Sometimes employees have altruistic reasons such as whistleblowing, but as Shropshire notes, sabotage behavior was most highly correlated with job changes, substance abuse, and relationship changes. Attack prevention. Some prevention methods we have been aware of and others are somewhat controversial. In addition to software and human user solutions, some experts have proposed new ways of analyzing data that we can already access to help predict attacks and thereby increase attack prevention. EMV is an acronym that stands for Eurocard, MasterCard, and Visa. These three companies together created standards for a debit and credit card solution that uses a two-step verification process to keep consumers' payment information safe. This process uses a chip on a card which stores payment information in an encrypted form and a PIN number that must be entered in order for the information held on the card's chip to be accessed by the vendor. This system is known in the United Kingdom as chip and PIN. After various security breaches experienced by retail outlets in the last few years, merchants, banks, and card vendors have finally decided to introduce EMV technology to the United States. However, one major difference between the US version and the European version is that the US version will allow for a signature in the place of the PIN number. Target and other retailers are hoping that the implementation of this system will reduce payment data theft. Previously, theft was possible due to the ease of stealing information from a magnetic strip. As a reassurance, some often cite the case of France, who was able to reduce payment data theft by up to 80% with the use of the EMV system. U.S. consumers can expect widespread implementation by 2016. Some experts have also proposed new ways of analyzing data that we already have access to help predict attacks and thereby increase attack prevention. They propose the analysis of a combination of structured network traffic data and unstructured text data to help predict cybercrime events. Unstructured data, according to Goal, consists of hacker forum postings, blogs, and websites, and is valuable for predicting imminent network threats, identifying their origins, and assigning attribution. While structured data includes log files from infected computers, routers, firewalls, and intrusion detection systems, darknets, and honeynets. Why are these two data types important? The combination of the two will allow us to not only catch the hackers, but to better understand their methods and origins. As Goal further notes, in cyber warfare investigations, technical analysis using structured data must be combined with analysis of unstructured data to establish attribution network, and text analysis can be used as mutual triggering activities. An alert triggered by network data analysis should prompt deeper investigation on specific hacker forums and vice versa. Intelligence gained from hacker forums should generate a deeper examination of network data from specific collection efforts. Security awareness training is the only way to prevent social engineering attacks such as phishing. However, if the incorrect method of training is used, or the importance of the company's cybersecurity policy is not stated emphatically enough, employees may disregard the training. Another possibility is that if the appropriate method isn't used, employees may miss or not understand valuable security information. A recent study performed by Jamal Abwage from Deakin University in Australia found that video-based training was the most effective digital method to use to train employees to receive security awareness information. This is an important finding because it suggests that handing a pamphlet or sending out an email, though efficient for a company, is not the most successful strategy to ensure employee participation in the company's cybersecurity defense strategy. The concept behind digital cleaning tools is that the authorities could push programs to users that would clean the infection from a user's computer. This is controversial because while a cleanup program could help users, it could also violate their privacy by giving law enforcement officials the ability to install other software on users' computers without their knowledge or permission. However, Costin Rao, the director of Global Research Analysis Team at Kaspersky Lab Fund, says, in a poll run on the SecureList website, a whopping 83% voted that Kaspersky Labs should push a cleanup tool that removes the infections, despite this being illegal in most countries. It seems at this rate users are really left to choose between the lesser of two evils, the guarantee of a violation of privacy rights by hackers, or the possibility of a loss of privacy to enforcement officials. Biometrics uses human physical characteristics such as fingerprints or retinal scans as a means of verifying a person's identity. Biometrics can be an extremely accurate method of identity verification as long as the equipment is accurate. However, biometrics aren't commonly used for everyday financial transactions at this time due to the cost and privacy issues surrounding their implementation. The cost for using biometrics can be very high due to the need for extremely accurate equipment. Another expense of biometrics is training and maintaining employees trained to use the scanning equipment. Privacy is also an issue due to the nature of biometric scans. If a person with malicious intent were to steal a user's biometric signature, it could be very difficult for the user to prove that they are in fact the legitimate user. Preventing this type of theft would mean that the institution that held this data would need to have nearly impenetrable security, which just isn't a reasonable expectation at this time. Two-step verification is a process that requires two types of information in order to verify a user's identity. There are three types of information that can be processed in a two-step verification process. Those three types are proof, comparison, and documentation. Proof is the user providing proof of who they are, and is rather straightforward. Comparison involves comparing provided information to general knowledge of that type of information. Of the three types, this is the easiest to forge. The third value, documentation, is also known as outside confirmation. In this type, outside documentation provides information that needs to be verified accurately by an outside source. The two-step process generally uses two of the three types discussed and is considered extremely secure. In one famous case, the infiltration of H.B. Gary Federal, experts believed that if the data theft could have been prevented if they had had multi-factor authentication enabled on Google Apps, the attackers wouldn't have been able to access a super user account and copy all the company emails. Future needs. The Estonian attacks provide a great example of how international information sharing can be beneficial to preventing cyber attacks or cybercrime. But international governments need to do more than cooperate on a per-incident basis. Nations must invest not only in cyber defense, but also in cyber deterrence, by building offensive capability. Coordination with upstream ISPs is needed to quickly block specific country domains or address spaces when large-scale threats are identified. Regulatory bodies must be required to audit critical infrastructure, SCADA security. Legislation requires utilities report cyber attacks using mandatory breach disclosure laws would also help investigate such incidents. Finally, public awareness, vigilance, and crisis management training should be incorporated to protect against the effects of cyber warfare. Domestically, the Personal Data Privacy and Security Act was a bill originally proposed by Senator Patrick Leahy in 2005. The purpose of the bill is to set standards for companies to follow in order to notify customers when a security breach occurs. It further requires companies to do their utmost to protect any consumer data that they have stored. He has stated that in light of the recent security breaches, he feels that it is an appropriate time to reintroduce the bill. And this concludes our presentation. Thank you.